told you that one small, innocent mistake with your money on a cruise could cost you hundreds and wasted dollars, if not more. From hidden foreign transaction fees to sneaky scams in port, too many cruisers get caught off guard. But here's the good news. Avoiding these pitfalls is easy if you know what to do and what not to do. So in this episode of my Cruise Pod, I'll share the smartest ways to protect your money while cruising, plus the one travel tip that changed the game for me and made travel so much more affordable. So let's get into it. Hi, I'm Melissa, a university professor who loves to cruise and who loves to talk ship. And when you're planning a cruise, a lot of us focus on the really fun stuff, the itineraries we want, what excursions and things we're gonna do, packing, and dreaming of being on the beach. But there's one part of cruise planning that often gets overlooked, which is money. And if you've never taken a cruise before or you're newer to cruising, there's a lot of questions. How much money should I bring? What's the safest way to pay for things? How do I avoid getting scammed? So in this episode, I'll break down how to protect your money while cruising, how to avoid fraud, and I'll explain why a travel credit card is a great option for frequent cruisers. First, let's talk about how much cash you should bring on a cruise. Well, the short answer is I can't tell you because everyone's different, but I'll give you some guidelines that can help you calculate your own individual situation, your own spending habits, and decide what you think you ought to bring. It's important to know, though, that cruises are pretty much cashless transactions. When you're on board a cruise ship, all of your purchases, drinks, excursions, specialty dining, are going to be charged to your cruise account, which is linked to a credit card. Now, some cruise lines will do a cash account, but then you have to settle that at the end of your cruise and that sort of thing. But you're not doing day-to-day transactions and exchanging cash on a cruise. Now, you will need some cash for tips. I like to tip on top of the included gratuities, but that's completely optional. I always bring some singles, $2 bills and $5 bills for tips for the folks on the cruise that do a really great job. You'll also need some cash for port days. So here's a quick rundown to help you decide what you need to bring money for, and then you can figure out how much you need to bring depending on your own individual spending habits. One is tipping. As I mentioned, I tip on board, but I also tip at ports of call, especially if I'm taking an excursion and I have a tour guide. So I always make sure to carry small bills for those tips and $20 bills or bigger bills for things like tour guides or my room steward that I give bigger tips to. You also want to account for having cash for local purchases. Now, many of the vendors in the major cruise ports, they're going to take credit cards, but also be cautious with that. We'll cover that in a minute. But some of the smaller vendors, taxis, and even market stalls sometimes only take cash or they prefer cash. And if you want some negotiating power, cash is king. If you have cash when you're buying things like souvenirs or taking a taxi, oftentimes you can leverage a better deal and negotiate with that vendor if you have cash rather than a credit card, because then that vendor doesn't incur a credit card transaction fee. Another thing to account for needing cash for are your beach bars. If you're a drinker and you want to get a quick drink from a market or a bar, cash is usually preferred and it makes transactions smoother. You also want an emergency cash stash. I always have extra cash on hand because I've had issues before I knew about the importance of a travel-specific credit card where I was stupidly using a debit card. My debit card got frozen for suspected fraud. I'm on a cruise ship. I didn't have Wi-Fi. I can't use a phone to call my bank. I can't use my card. So I always have some cash on hand in case of emergencies or in case something happens with a credit or a debit card. Now, a good general rule is having about $50 to $150 per port, but of course, depending on what you plan to do, is nice to have on hand. If your excursions are prepaid, you'll need less cash, but don't forget to tip your tour guide. Now, when you're cruising, it is important to avoid fraud in cruise ports. I don't want to scare you for no reason, but you just have to be smart when you travel, cruising or otherwise, because cruise ports, they're full of tourists, and that unfortunately means that it's going to attract scammers. So here are some ways to protect yourself when you're at a cruise port. One is to skip the debit card. It's one of the biggest financial mistakes travelers make. Unlike credit cards, debit cards have less fraud protection. And if someone gets access to your debit card, they could drain your actual cash reserves. And recovering those stolen funds, usually it's possible, but it takes time and it ties up your cash. And that's the last thing you want to have to deal with on vacation. I always use a travel-friendly credit card because these cards offer zero liability protection. So if I am a victim of fraud, I'm not responsible for those charges. Another thing is to avoid shady ATMs. It's important to watch videos like this and determine how much cash you need so you're not in a situation where you need to withdraw cash from your bank account via an ATM when you're on a cruise. If you do, however, need access to cash, use ATMs on the cruise ship. You're probably going to pay some transaction fees, but that's a safe bet. Or at a cruise port destination, find a bank. use the ATM inside the bank, not those standalone machines that are located especially in touristy areas. Also be aware of card skimmers. Some ATMs and payment terminals or portals are tampered with and a skimmer will go on top of it. So if you swipe a card, your credit card can be skimmed and scammers will then use that to steal your credit card details. Now, fortunately, a lot of merchants now are moving to the tap to pay technology. A good travel specific credit card is going to have the tap to pay, although not all merchants have the more up-to-date technology. But before you go to swipe your card or insert your card physically into a machine, take a look. If it looks sketchy, if there's loose or jiggly parts, the keypad looks a little wonky, don't use it. Also, set up transaction alerts. Many credit cards, especially travel-specific credit cards, allow you to enable real-time alerts. That helps you spot fraud faster, but in my case, I use them to monitor my spending and make sure I'm staying on track. So if you're like me and you love to cruise or travel and you travel frequently, it's really important to get a travel-specific credit card. So let me tell you why I finally, a few months ago, switched to one specific travel credit card when before I was kind of doing it the dumb and messy way. Now, let me tell you, I've gone down the travel credit card rabbit hole. If you watch my content, you know I love to ball on a budget. I'm always looking for the best deals. I'm always negotiating, finding the best pricing because I like to take a cruise at least once a month. And I'm not rich. The way I do that is by sailing on free casino cruise offers. I have a video about that here. And then also saving money on other things like hotels and flights. So for a period of time, I was stupidly juggling multiple credit cards to earn points. I had Hyatt, Hilton, Frontier, American, United. I had so many different travel credit cards, it was kind of ridiculous. So the problem was though, I never had enough points on the right card when I needed them. I was spending money across multiple cards. They all had different point balances. I might need a night at the Hilton in Fort Lauderdale before a cruise out of Port Everglades. And I had a bunch of Hyatt points, but I needed Hilton points. It was really a mess. And it was also really hard for me to control and track my spending. So I spent a lot of time researching, reading different discussion boards, listening to finance gurus. I wanted to know how to maximize my points, and doing it across multiple brands for me just was absolutely not working. So I finally made the switch to the card that everybody raved about. I heard so much positive stuff about it, I kind of was skeptical, to be honest, because I have trust issues. And that's the Capital One Venture X Rewards card. And I always try to be honest and transparent in my videos. So I can tell you when I recommend something, it's because I absolutely love it. This video is not sponsored by Capital One in any way. However, I will give you my referral information. And if you do actually sign up for this card, you get approved, I do receive a small referral fee at no cost to you. That helps support my content. So yes, I do have a bias in that way, but I legitimately think this is the best card for cruisers. And here's why. First is there are no foreign transaction fees. I learned the hard way that even if you're cruising out of the United States, even on a cruise ship, cruise lines like MSC, which is an Italian company, they will charge you an international transaction fee. My first MSC cruise, I was like, oh, I'm gonna be responsible. I'm gonna use my debit card because cash is king and I don't want credit card debt. And I got hit with the transaction fee. So that was a little bit of a shock. But if I would have paid with something like the Venture X card, there are 0 fees on foreign transactions. So that would have saved me money on the cruise ship for my onboard expenses, and it would save me money at every port location. You shouldn't be using a debit card at ports anyway because of the risk of fraud, which we talked about, but it's also going to make sure that you're not incurring those foreign transaction fees. Another thing I love about the Venture X card is airport lounge access. I try to avoid my time in airports and do one-way flights, but sometimes it's unavoidable that you have a long layover, especially with longer international flights. And with my Venture X card, I get free Priority Pass lounge access, and I love it. I fly out of Cincinnati, which is CVG Airport. We have a Priority Pass lounge. It's really great. I can go in, I can get snacks. They have a coffee machine. They have beverages. They have alcohol beverages, but I'm not a drinker. But it's a really nice place to relax, and I have free Wi-Fi. I can work before my flight. So I really love that Priority Pass perk. Another thing I love about this card, which is true of also other travel specific cards, it's important to check, is that it offers comprehensive travel insurance. This covers everything from trip delays and cancellations to lost luggage and even rental car coverage. So every time now I rent a car, I use my Venture X card. I decline the rental car coverage that costs extra because I know if something goes wrong, the fact that I booked a car with that card gives me protections. Now, when it comes to insurance things, I always recommend travelers, especially frequent travelers, to not just rely on credit card protections on a travel specific card though, because sometimes those are limited, especially things like trip cancellation protection. It's very minimal coverage. So I do recommend travel insurance. I have a whole video about it if you want to check it out. But if something minor goes wrong, if you use a travel specific card, in a lot of cases, you have at least some protections. Now, the big reason I wanted this card, this is why I was trying to play the credit card game in travel in the first place, is you earn miles. So I looked at all the different major travel credit cards. I looked at the ones I already had. I looked at how many miles are earned. I looked at redemption. And for me, the VentureX card was absolutely the best because it's centralized through the Capital One travel portal. Again, I was juggling all of these different brands, Hilton, Hyatt, Frontier, United, American, and others, and it was really hard to keep track of. And it was really hard to redeem because they're all so different. But with Capital One Travel, I earn my points on one card, on one account, no more juggling different brand points. There's one central hub, and that was really important to me. So now when I want to redeem and book travel, I can do it centrally through there. And I'm newer to it. I just finally got this card a couple of months ago, but I have to say I'm pretty obsessed with this portal. Redemptions are super easy. I can search for flights really easy, and I absolutely love it. Now, again, if you want more information on the Capital One VentureX card, I'll drop the link down in the description. And remember, I do receive a small referral bonus at no cost to you, but it does help support my content, and I do truly believe in this card. And now, not only do I use it for my travel, I use it almost exclusively for all of my purchases to earn those sweet, sweet points. So I encourage all frequent cruisers and frequent travelers to have a travel-specific credit card. Definitely check out Capital One VentureX. It's absolutely my favorite one. It's right for me, but it's not for everyone. So do your research, look around, find the right travel card, but use a travel-specific card because of those benefits, because of those protections that you get, because of earning points that save you money on things like hotel and your airfare. So if you cruise or travel multiple times a year, if you want airport lounge access, travel perks, you want to avoid transaction fees, you like flexible rewards that aren't tied to a single brand, the VentureX card is great, or other travel specific cards. Again, do your homework, see the perks, see what they offer, but VentureX is it for me. But it's not the right move for everyone. If you're an infrequent traveler, you only take a cruise once every couple of years, it's not for you. If you want a no annual fee card, this is not for you. A lot of the top tier travel specific credit cards like VentureX have pretty high annual fees. The VentureX card has a $395 annual fee. That's a big fee. But for me, the perks make up for it. Namely, I get a $300 annual travel credit. I redeemed it immediately for a trip to Barcelona for an upcoming Mediterranean cruise, effectively making my annual fee $95. But if you're not going to make use of that $300 annual travel credit, I wouldn't pay a $395 fee for something like that unless you really need the other perks. But when you account for all the things that you get, the ability to redeem miles on all kinds of travel-related expenses, the coverage, lounge access, travel insurance, rewards, it's definitely worth it for more frequent travelers. Oh, and another thing about this card that is amazing, I actually had forgotten about this. I had done my research and kind of put it out of my mind. A few weeks ago, I booked a flight to Houston for an upcoming cruise out of Galveston, and I booked it through my Capital One portal, and I didn't have enough points at that time, so I just paid for it. But a week after booking, I got a push notification on my Capital One app telling me that the cost of the flight had gone down. I didn't have to do a single thing. I didn't have to track it. I didn't have to notify or submit a form. They literally did it all. Capital One caught the price change. They notified me of it, and they immediately applied that price difference to my account as a travel credit for a future booking, which I already used. And that actually was about $65. So cruising is an amazing way to travel, but you want to make sure you protect your finances. Know how much cash to bring, know what kind of cards to use, and look at a travel-friendly credit card if you are a frequent cruiser. And also make sure you avoid all of the scams that are out there. But I want to know, what's your favorite travel-specific credit card? I'm sold on Capital One VentureX, but if there's something out there that's better, tell me about it, because I'm not married to it. So drop your comments below, and while you're at it, be sure to comment and subscribe. And as always, visit my website, profmelissa.com, for free port guides, more information about cruising, and all kinds of other fun things.